In this video, I will be going through half of the Topic 9 quiz review. Specifically, I'm going to be going through the left side. Right side is exactly the same, just different numbers. So hopefully you can apply what you see from the left side onto the right side. Starting with number 1, use the graph to find the solutions. When you graph a quadratic function, you will get a parabola like this. That's what we did in Topic 8. When you graph the parabola, the solutions are the x-intercepts. So we are looking for where the parabola crosses the x-intercept, the x-axis. We're looking for the x-intercepts. Where are the x-intercepts in this parabola? The first one is right there, so that's my first answer. X equals -1. My second answer is right here. X equals 3. Pretty straightforward using a graph. And then the website that we use when we have to graph it, so when there's no graph provided, and they ask us to graph, is desmo.com/calculator using Google Classroom on the screen, but I'll also write it out for you in the next problem. Number 2, I'm going to go over just because it's a special case. The same thing is use the graph to find the solutions. This parabola does not cross the x-axis. The x-axis is down here. Because it never crosses, this is one of the special cases where there is no solution. Sometimes there will be one solution, sometimes no solution, and then majority of the time, 2 solutions. Okay, so this is our first example. It says solve by graphing. So they want me to use the website, which is desmos.com/calculator. You will have access to this website the day you take the quiz. Now, for this purpose, I actually already typed it in and took a screenshot. So when you open the website, you'll get this page. You type in the first part of the equation into a box over here. In my case, it was the first box. And then again, I look for the x-intercept. So in this case, this parabola crosses the x-axis at -6 and +4. So those are my 2 answers, -6, +4. X equals -6 and x equals +4. And then you would repeat, type this equation into Desmos, and then see where the parabola crosses the x-axis. 5 and 6. For these 2 problems, when we did the stations on Friday, there were a lot of questions. Mr. Bean, do you want us to multiply this? I don't get it. Can you help me? So this is actually the easy case. This is the first thing we learned when we started solving in this unit. These 2 things multiply to equal 0. That means that x plus 5 could be the 0, or x minus 3 equals the 0. So you set both of them equal to 0 because we don't know which one. And then you simply solve. How do you get rid of adding? You subtract. So my first answer is -5. My second answer is +3. If I plug these numbers in for x, I would get 0. A -5 right here, -5 plus 5 equals 0. And then 0 times this would be 0. So you see how that makes it true. That's what a solution is supposed to do. If I plug in a +3 here, 3 minus 3 is 0, which times the first set of parentheses would equal 0. So that also makes the equation true. Just caution with number 6, you're going to get a decimal or fraction when you solve that one. It is okay to get fractions and decimals. 7 and 8, it's an extension of the previous one. This one we cannot solve the way it is currently written. Those two x terms need to be separated. How do we separate it? We break up the expression, so we're going to factor using the x method. A times c always goes on top, so 1 times 35, that's 35. B always goes on bottom, 12 goes on bottom. What are two numbers that multiply to 35 and add to 12? 7 and 5. Since a is 1, since there's no number in the front of x squared, we can skip the factor by grouping and go straight to factor form. There's always an x in the front. Not going to connect this x. And once you put your x's, you fill in the blanks with the two numbers from your x method. So plus 5 and plus 7. Bring down the equal 0. So all we have done is take this expression and we separated the x terms. Now there's a 1x here, there's a 1x here. Why? Because now I can separate it even more and say if these two things multiply to equal 0, that means the first one could be the 0 or the second one could be the 0. So we set both of them equal to 0. And then again, we solve. How do I get rid of addition in both of these? Subtract. First answer, -7. Second answer, -5. Okay, moving on to the back. Number 9, write each expression without a perfect square factor in the radicand. That long sentence is just a fancy way of saying simplify. They want me to simplify the expressions. The top two is just a single expression, so we just go straight into multiplying or into factoring. What are two numbers that multiply to 28? 7 times 4. X to the third means that I have 3 x's. 1, 2, 3. We look for perfect squares and pairs. 4 is a perfect square. So I'm going to take out a 2. I have a pair of x's, so I'm going to take out an x. Nothing else. 7 and x are not perfect squares. They don't have a match, so that's how I know I'm done. Multiply everything back together. 7 times x is 7x. 2 times x is 2x. Bottom two, you're multiplying. So you have to multiply the outsides, but in both of these, there's no outside. So it makes it a little bit easier. Multiply the insides. So first thing I'm going to do is put them together under one radical. 15x squared times 5x cubed. Now I'm going to break them up. We don't actually multiply because what's the point of multiplying if we're going to have to break it up anyway? Two numbers that multiply to 15. 3 and 5. 5 and 3. X squared means there's two x's. 5 is already the smallest it can get, so can't break it up. And then x3 means x times x times x. All right, perfect squares and pairs. I see a pair of 5s. Take out a 5. I see a pair of x's. Take out an x. And then I see another pair of x's. So take out another x. Three and x are not perfect squares. They don't have a match, so I'm done. Put my answer back together. 3 times x is 3x. 5 times x, that's 5x squared. 5x squared with a radical of 3x. 10 and 11. Last thing we learned is solving using square roots. These equations are different from the ones on the front or even the one underneath. So like if you look at 10, it's different from 12 because here there's only one x term. Remember on the front, we had to separate the x's by factoring. Since there's only one x term, you can just solve like a regular equation. What do I mean by that? Just do the opposite of what you see. So for example, I see a minus 9, so I'm going to add 9. On the left side, I have a 4x squared now. Negative 5 plus 9 is 4. How do I get rid of the 4 that's being multiplied? I divide. X squared equals 1. Now the only thing that you learn from me is how do you get rid of that exponent? The opposite of an exponent is a radical. So the opposite of a square is a square root. When you do to one side, you do to the other. What are the two numbers that multiply to 1, but it has to be the same number? Positive and negative 1. Now, caution, the second one, if I remember correctly, will give you a decimal. So you will need to type that into your calculator at some point towards the end. 12 and 13, these are the hard cases for factoring. How do I know it's the more difficult case? There's a number in the front. That means there is no shortcut. So I'm going to set up my x because I have to split these x terms up in order to solve. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. 4 goes on bottom. What are the two numbers that multiply negative 21 and add to 4? Well, to get a negative, I know I need a positive and a negative. Positive times negative is negative. And 7 and 3. 7 needs to be the positive. In this case, you don't go into factored form. This is where you have to go the long way. So split the 4x. It's going to change to 7x minus 3x. And then you keep the last term the same. Now we factor by grouping. GCF of this first group is just x, because 3 and 7 cannot be divided by the same number. So we put the x in the front and figure out what's left. My pen will not let me draw a parenthesis. Okay, let's go backwards. If I take an x out of there, the 7 stays. And then if I take an x out of there, I get 3x. In the second set of parentheses, I can't take an x out. I can't divide 3 and 7. So I'm going to take out a negative 1. Specifically a negative because the first term is negative. That just changes the sign. Now these match. So we take the two things on the outside, x minus 1, put those together, and keep one of the groups, 3x plus 7. Don't forget the equal 0 that we ignored while we factored. And now you solve this. Take each one, set it equal to 0. X minus 1 equals 0. 3x plus 7 equals 0. In this case, the one on the left, I just have to add 1. Pretty simple. The one on the right, I'm going to get a fraction. The opposite of adding is subtracting. And to get rid of multiplication, we divide. So this is my second answer. You would repeat all of those steps with 13. Hopefully this helped. Every one of these questions will be on the quiz. Exactly the same, different numbers, obviously. If you have any questions, feel free to see me, email me. I will be at tutoring. Whatever I can do to help, just let me know. Have a good day.